Hello. 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 Okay. Uh, a very warm welcome to you once again. I'm sorry for the delay. Actually, I have planned to conduct this model answer session on Sunday itself, but there was a festival on that day, so it became really difficult for me to manage my time. But I promise from next week onwards, we will be having the test on Saturdays and we will be doing the discussion on Sundays. So let's get started. We have seen 5 questions. I will be providing you a PDF of those questions once again, and I will also be giving you some model answers as well. But what is more important to understand, to address the question in the right manner, we first of all need to have a very good and a clear approach. How am I supposed to give a structure to these answers? So as always, we will be dividing our answer into 3 parts. So first is, what will be the introduction that you need to provide? So if you look at this question, what are we going to talk about? Let's read it. Sociology is a product of modernity. Critically examine the given statement. So when you look at this question, what comes in your mind? Usually, we connect this topic, sociology is a product of modernity, that it came into existence somewhere in the 19th century. So what exactly was happening in Europe before 19th century? And in the introduction, you need to go and speak something about the history of sociology, that if it has come into existence in 19th century, then there were some event that has happened in 15th, 16th, 18th, and so on. So what are you going to tell in the introductory part? That sociology is basically a product of modernity and some events has happened in 15th, 16th, 18th century, so on and so forth. And then when I will be going into the main demand of this question, the content will be divided into 2 parts. And what is that? First, you are going to say that yes, I agree that sociology is a product of modernity. On the other hand, I am also going to go and discuss and say, no, it is not just the product of modernity of Europe, but rather there is much more to it. So why am I speaking why am I discussing this answer in 2 different dimensions of yes and no? Because when you look over here, the term is critically examine. So to make sure this critical examination is there, I will be discussing in yes and in no manner. So what is yes? That it is a product of modernity. First is that in 15th century, there has been an essence of Renaissance on enlightenment was happening in Europe. And due to this Renaissance, in 15th century, the maximum modernity is going to be expected. Why? Because Renaissance, it is associated to the ideological changes in Europe. If I look in the 16th century, what was happening? The 16th century was surrounded with aspect of a large level of scientific revolution that was being brought. So many scientific temperaments have started to get established. And when I look in the 18th century, see, when I look in the 18th century, there was an establishment of American Revolution, French Revolution. So the modernity that you're seeing, it is on the basis of scientific temperament. It is on the basis of ideological changes. It is also associated to the political changes. So the point is, yes, sociology is a product of modernity that was happening in Europe due to ideological, scientific, etc. So going to the other hand, that no, it is not a product of modernity. It means you will have to highlight some points which is not just about European modernity, but rather sociology is a product of much more, something even beyond Europe. I want to mention about an Arab philosopher. He was a historian. His name was Ibn Khaldun, and he has written a very popular book called as Muqaddimah. So in this book, Muqaddimah, Ibn Khaldun is talking about these elements. And we also get to see that beyond the Eurocentric approach, sociology was also progressing with the help of Chinese philosophy, with the help of Arab philosophies, even with the contributions that has happened in North America. So there is something to talk about even beyond Europe as well. And not to forget that sociology is not just about understanding the modern societies, it is also about explaining the postmodern societies, and one of the most famous contributor has been Jean Baudrillard. So what are we looking over here? In this particular question, I have mentioned about introduction. I have mentioned about the content that with agreements that yes, it's a product of modernity. No, it is not just a product of modernity. And then I am going to bring a conclusion. And what is the conclusion all about? That sociology has largely been a product of a modern society. It is also a product of postmodern society as well. So I have included both the part. So in this way, I am going to be mentioning about a holistic, or in a way, it is a well balanced conclusion that has been present. So here the first question that we have discussed, that how it is a product of modernity, introduction, content and conclusion. Let's go to the second question. Uh, Take a time and just look at this question. Differentiate. Before you even discuss, I want to give you some time in which you are getting to know what is the different aspect that we need to talk about. Differentiate the subject matter of sociology and psychology. If there is something that you want to add in the comment section, please let me know. See, now I have already given you the syllabus of how the questions are going to be framed. The first question, it was coming from the part, so unit 1, sociology, the discipline, modernity and social changes in Europe. In the second question, we are trying to compare this subject with the other social sciences. We are trying to compare these subjects with some other parallel disciplines. Now, what are you going to talk here? In the introduction part, we will be looking at what is the difference that sociology has when we compare it to the field of psychology. Sociology is largely a form of a discipline, and so psychology is largely a form of a discipline which is focused on explaining an individual. And what is this subject? This subject is largely associated with understanding of collectivity of individual. So here we are focused on understanding an individual. Here we are focused on understanding a group of individuals. So primarily this is going to be your introduction. What am I going to highlight? In the content, I will make sure that I am using a tabular column because the keyword that we are having over here is differentiate. So in my content, I am going to speak at a tabular fashion in which I will be speaking about some differences of psychology and sociology. What is the first difference that we primarily see? The first difference is psychology is a subject which is trying to understand the the society at a micro level. So what is the meaning of micro level? You are trying to understand at an individual level. Largely sociology is trying to have a macro level of understanding. So here we try to understand the groups, the communities, the societies. This is a primary difference. Another main difference that we are having is Sociology and psychology, they both are differentiated. Psychology is trying to understand the aspect of personality development, how an individual is trying to behave, the cognitive patterns which are present, or they are trying to understand the emotional abilities of an individual. On the another hand, the subject of sociology, it doesn't focus upon personality development, cognitive beings, but rather it is focused on understanding of social institutions. It rather wants to focus how groups are going to behave or how communities are put up. And when an individual is attached to any institutions, it is called to be as behaviors, or it is also called to be as role performances. This was a very popular term that has been used by Talcott Parsons. We try to understand the role performances. How are you going to behave in Gemeinschaft and in Gesellschaft societies? Another primary difference is psychology wants to understand how an individual processes information. On the basis of their own processment, they try to show their traits. But here, sociology doesn't talk about process, but rather it talks about some patterns. Like for example, the way how we are doing a discussion in this live session, it is not on the basis of process, it's a pattern. You have that pattern in your mind, that how am I going to behave. You have a thing in your mind that how am I going to perform my role as a tutor or as a professor. We all maintain the decorum of educational institutions. We are acting like one YouTube community, but there is a pattern that we have established, and these patterns are present at a macro level. Last but not the least, we say psychology is a subject which focuses on understanding of isolated individuals. On the other, sociology is associated with understanding group of individuals which are called to be as communities. So here, uh, what is the primary difference that we are having? We have looked into it. In the conclusion, you are going to say that both of these subjects, whether we are talking about sociology or we are talking about psychology, both of them are playing a very important role. They play an indispensable factor in understanding of human beings. So you are not going to negate the fact, you are not going to ignore the fact that one is more important, the another one is less important. This way, they both are equally important to understand in a holistic manner, to understand in a broad manner what is an individual. Such way of looking at society, it's a view that is highly inspired by postmodern perspective of sociology. Now, going to the next question. Uh, uh, just take a look at this question. It's a very easy question that I have given. What do you understand by alienation? Elaborate. So look at it. From which part of the syllabus this question has been coming? The concept of alienation. What do you understand by the topic of alienation? Elaborate. When you directly look at it, the topic of alienation is largely associated with understanding of Marxian sociology. So when you take a look, this question has been taken from unit 4, and that too, it has been taken from Karl Marx chapter, the chapter number 3 that you are having. The first is historical materialism, the second is mode of production, and then comes the topic of alienation. What do you understand by alienation? Give an explanation. So here, in the introduction part, you are going to tell that this concept of alienation has been taken from the book called as Economic and Philosophical Manuscripts. This is the book that has been written by Karl Marx. So you are going to be talking about that it has been taken from economic and philosophical manuscripts. And what is the meaning of the word uh, alienation? The literal meaning of the word alienation means separation from. Another meaning of the word alienation is estrangement from self. So a person is going to act like a stranger to themselves, and how this concept of alienation is being established. What do you understand by alienation? It has been a estrangement concept. And then after describing the introduction, what you are going to talk about is the aspect of content. So here, let's try to first explain what is the concept of alienation which is given by the Marxist view. I am going to be talking about your own personal view as well. But before that, let's try to look what is the meaning of alienation. Let's first try to see what is the meaning of alienation from the Marxist view. There are four steps in which how alienation has been achieved. The first is alienation which comes from the process of production. The second is the alienation which comes from the product itself. The third is alienation which is achieved especially among the co-workers, and last is alienation of self, which is nothing but the alienation of species being. So once I have discussed the Marxist view, now I would like to add what is the meaning of alienation which comes at a personal level. So here I am going to be talking about how a person who doesn't get a job, he is in a state of economic alienation. A person who is not having their voice in democracy, they are in a state of political alienation. A person who is isolated, who is not present on technology or who is not using the social media platform, they are in the state of technological or in the state of digital divide. They are in a state of tech alienation. And here we can speak about different aspects of alienation that comes especially with the help of basic amenities are missing. All the way I am going to interlink this concept of alienation with the term called as social exclusion. So how social exclusion is happening within the society. I need to discuss those particular aspects. So in the introduction, I will be talking about a definition. Then in the content or all different types of Marxist alienation are there. This is going to be my personal interpretation with the word what do you mean? And then in the conclusion, you are going to say the concept of alienation. It has largely been explained in the age of classical capitalism, because Marx has mentioned this concept somewhere in the middle of the 19th century. But today I am going to say this concept is highly relatable. It is highly connected. We are highly able to connect with this topic even in the age of postmodern society or with the form of uh, liberal capitalism as well. So here, what do you understand by the term alienation? Introduction, content, and then we are having a conclusion. Going to the next question, critically examine the concept of class struggle. In my opinion, this is not a very easy question, but let's try to understand, because we need to be speaking about what is this concept of class struggle that we are having. If you look at Karl Marx in his one of the writing, he has mentioned that hitherto the history of class has always been a history of class struggle. This concept has been mentioned by Marx in his book called as Communist Manifesto. So in the introduction, you are going to be speaking about the concept of class struggle with the famous line, hitherto the history of class. You can speak about the most sacred book of communism, it's Communist Manifesto. And then when we go towards the content part, you are going to explain what is this class struggle. And every time the Marxian concept has divided the society into two parts. One are those individuals who are privileged, they are called to be as haves. Those who are disprivileged, they are called to be as have-nots. How are they going to come under, because how are they going to come under a conflict? It is because of the class struggle. And if the class struggle is very commonly seen, we are going to see due to this class struggle, class conflict, there is a relation of class antagonism which is being established. And when this class antagonism is there, this is going to create a class conflict. And what is this class conflict is going to lead? It will make sure the haves are thrown away. And who are the haves? The haves are basically called to be as the bourgeois. They will come under the conflict who are called to be as proletariats. So Marx says the bourgeois are going to lose the war, and who will win? The proletariats are going to win. This is called to be as the dictatorship of proletariat. And when these collective proletariats are going to win, this is going to be the stage of socialism. And when they themselves are going to give up the power, this is called to be as communism. So how do you see this concept? How do you see this concept of proletariats winning in communism? You can criticize this concept. I have given in my notes, it has been criticized by Max Weber. This concept has been criticized by a sociologist called as Ralph Dahrendorf. This concept has also been established by a sociologist called as Lockwood. So what are the criticism given by the vulgar Marxist? What is the criticism given by conflict sociologists? What is the social criticism which has been given, who has given the concept of affluent workers? So Lockwood, Dahrendorf, Max Weber, they are the ones. In the conclusion, you are going to say Marx has given a very popular concept of class struggle. But what he give? He has given uh, a very unilateral theory. We need to be pragmatic to understand that there are not just two classes. In fact, class struggle has been established, but it has very much changed, especially in the case of a globalized 21st century. So my conclusion is going to acclaim class struggle is there. My conclusion is also going to criticize that Marx has given an economic determinist theory, a unilateral theory, and I'm also going to say in 21st century, these concepts might not be highly relatable. Now, next come, what is the purpose of sociology in modern world? Take a look at this question. And can you use, yes, you can use charts. Now, going to the last question. What is the purpose of sociology in modern world? When we look at this question has largely been taken from the unit 1 part B, which speaks about the scope of sociology. So what are we going to talk about in the scope of sociology? You will be dealing, okay, in the introduction, you are going to be talking about how sociology is associated in explaining the modern world. Largely when the society was homogeneous, largely when the society was not very diversified, we use the element of religion and tradition to understand. But as the society kept on changing, the transformation, the transition started to happen at a faster level. So in the introduction, you are going to say the birth or the purpose of this subject, the rational existence for this subject. It is to understand the modern world and what is the purpose, what is it trying to fill, the reasons for its existence. It is trying to understand the new world order. It is trying to understand how the modern societies are being established. So one reason what sociology is trying to do, it is trying to create an aspect of planning, and it is associated with public policies. What is the purpose of this subject? We want to understand the whole diverse society, such as these diverse societies are on the basis of their unique speciality. If we are focused on heterogeneous society, we understand the concept of globalization. If we are trying to understand the heterogeneous society, this is associated with localization or nationalization. If we are trying to understand the homogeneous society, you are focusing on globalization. And if you are trying to understand the hybrid society, this is the concept largely associated given by Ronald Robertson. So I am talking about globalization, I'm talking about globalization, and even localization. So different types of societies are present, all of them. And then sociology is also associated with understanding of new perspectives, how we are trying to build a complete new perspective of suicide, how we are trying to build a complete new perspective of crime, how we are trying to understand the modern forms of social issues which are being present. Another reason for this is to make sure that society should able to understand what is the new kind of modern institutions which are being established. A fast-paced society is being established because of social media. And if we don't understand these modern institutions, technology, how social media is trying to create, then there will be a problem which will be brought by the technology. This will be like a cultural lag, a concept which has been given by Ogburn and Nimkoff. And largely, a very beautiful line has been told what is the purpose of sociology, that you must be able to know what has happened in the past, to know, to control, to predict. See, what is the purpose of sociology? To know, to control, to predict. This line has been popularly given by Auguste Comte. So when you look at it, what is the meaning? I must be able to know what has happened in the past. To control, basically, I must be able to have a good control on my present. And then to predict, it basically talks about the future that we are having. So what is the purpose of sociology? We are highlighting multiple different forms of purposes. In the conclusion, you are going to say that sociology is a subject which wants to explain what is the meaning of modern institutions, what is the meaning of modern communities, what is the meaning of the word modern world. It is trying to understand the society at a practical, pragmatic, rational, in a logical, goal-oriented manner. So these are some of the words that you will use in your conclusion. Let's go back. What are we trying to do in our today's class? We are trying to understand what is the first test all about. Here I have already given you the syllabus that we want to discuss the unit 1, we wanted to discuss the unit 4, and we wanted to discuss the unit 5 that we are having. So in the first week test, I have focused largely what was the syllabus of the first week test. I will be talking to you about unit 1, and at the same time I will also be giving you some questions on unit 4, and that too the topic was Karl Marx. So only from two different dimensions I have framed these questions. Unit 1, sociology the discipline, and from unit 4, Karl Marx. This was the syllabus that we had in our week 1. So what are the model questions? I will be giving you a PDF. I will also be giving you some model answers. These are not the model answers what we are talking about. These we are talking about a basic structure and a good, a healthy outline that we need to have. And what is this? We have divided the question into the introduction, a nice content, and then a conclusion. In the second, we have tried to bring some differentiation between sociology and psychology. And in the third, we were trying to understand what is the meaning of Marxist alienation, what is the meaning of our alienation. Fourth question, we were trying to understand what is the concept of class struggle that we are having. And then we equally criticize this. Why? Because the term that comes over here is critically examined. And last, we try to understand the sociology in a modern concept. What is the purpose of this subject? What is the rational reasons? That's it in our today's session. Please kindly prepare yourself for the upcoming week, uh, because the more you stick to these preparation, the more better you will be able to have. Do check out the model answers that I have given on the platform. I have also added this into my Telegram channel as well, and here we are trying to do a live session as well. I wish you all the best. If there's any questions, please let me know in the comment section. Try to connect to me. I will also be discussing. If there is something that you want extra from my side, I would surely love to do that. Take care. Have a nice day.